You know that feeling when you finally get the promotion you've been working toward for like 2 years? The title change, the salary bump, the new business cards if your company still does those. And for about 3 weeks, maybe a month, you feel like you've made it. You're checking your bank account more often because, honestly, seeing that bigger number hit every 2 weeks just feels good, right? But then something weird happens. 6 months later, a year later, you look around and you don't really feel that different. The excitement's gone. You're still stressed about money. You're still living paycheck to paycheck, just at a higher income level. You upgraded the car, maybe moved to a slightly nicer apartment, started eating out more because, you deserve it after working so hard. And suddenly that promotion that was supposed to change everything, it's just another line on your resume. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay locked in the same patterns for decades, earning more and more, but never actually getting ahead. And what I've realized, what I really want to talk about today, is that most of us are chasing the wrong thing entirely. We're obsessed with income, with climbing the ladder, with getting promoted, when the actual mechanics of wealth building are happening in a completely different place. It's not that promotions are bad, obviously. It's that they create this illusion of progress that can actually distract you from the things that genuinely matter. And once you understand this, once you really see how wealth actually accumulates, it changes everything about how you approach your career, your spending, your entire financial life. So let's talk about what actually builds wealth. Not the motivational poster version, not the get-rich-quick scheme version, the real, boring, mathematical version that nobody wants to hear, but that actually works. Here's the thing about promotions that nobody really tells you. They're designed to keep you working, not to make you wealthy. Think about it. Your company gives you a raise, a better title, maybe some more responsibility, and what happens? You feel valued. You feel like you're progressing. You work harder, stay later, take on more stress, all while your lifestyle quietly expands to match your new income. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it's probably the single biggest reason why people who make six figures can feel just as broke as people making half that. I remember talking to this guy, let's call him Marcus, who went from making $65,000 a year to $95,000 in about 3 years. 2 promotions, good career trajectory, doing everything right according to conventional wisdom. And when I asked him if he felt wealthier, he actually laughed. Dude, he said, I have less savings now than I did when I was making $65K. And the crazy thing is, he wasn't even being irresponsible. He didn't go out and buy a boat or anything. He just lived like someone who makes $95,000. Nicer apartment because he could finally afford it, better car because the old one was embarrassing to park at the office, more dinners out, better vacations, clothes that fit the new position, all justifiable, all reasonable, all completely preventing him from actually building wealth. Because here's what actually builds wealth: the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That's it. That's the whole game. Everything else, the investment strategies, the side hustles, the real estate deals, all of that sits on top of this one fundamental truth. If you earn $100,000 and spend $98,000, you have $2,000 to build wealth with. If you earn $60,000 and spend $45,000, you have $15,000 to build wealth with. The person making less is getting wealthier faster, despite having the worst job on paper. And I know what you're thinking, but Nick, you can't just never improve your lifestyle. You can't live like a college student forever. And you're right. But here's the thing. Most people improve their lifestyle automatically and unconsciously with every raise and promotion. What wealthy people do, and this is so simple it's almost offensive, is they improve their lifestyle intentionally and slowly, creating a bigger and bigger gap over time. Let me tell you about compound interest, but not in the boring way your high school math teacher explained it. Compound interest is basically time travel for money.
It's the closest thing we have to actual magic in the financial world. When you invest money, it grows, but then the growth grows, and then the growth of the growth grows. It sounds simple, almost too simple to matter, but over long periods of time, it becomes absolutely absurd. There's this example that gets used a lot, but I'm going to use it anyway because it genuinely changed how I think about money. Let's say you're 25 years old. If you invest $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year, at an average return of about 10%, which is roughly what the stock market has averaged over the long term, by the time you're 65, you'll have about $3.2 million. You personally contributed $240,000 over those 40 years. The other $3 million? That's compound interest. That's your money making money, and then that money making money over and over again.
But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that makes promotions feel like a distraction. If you wait until you're 35 to start, so you start with a higher salary after getting those promotions, and you invest that same $500 a month, you end up with about $1.36 million. You lost 10 years, and it cost you almost $2 million in final wealth, even though you only missed $60,000 in contributions. Time is more valuable than money when it comes to building wealth, which means that starting early with less is almost always better than starting later with more. And this is what drives me crazy about how we think about career progression. We spend our 20s and early 30s grinding for promotions and salary increases, telling ourselves, I'll start investing seriously once I'm making more money, and we're literally throwing away the most valuable asset we have, which is time. A 25-year-old investing $200 a month will likely end up wealthier than a 35-year-old investing $600 a month, even though the 35-year-old is putting in 3 times as much money. That's not a metaphor, that's just math. Okay, so let's talk about what actually builds wealth in a practical sense. Not theory, not inspiration, actual mechanisms that take money and turn it into more money over time. First, equity. Whether it's in a business, in real estate, or in the stock market, owning things that produce value is how wealth actually accumulates. Your salary is trading time for money. Equity is owning something that makes money whether you're working or not. This is why every billionaire got there through ownership, not salary. Even CEOs who make tens of millions a year, most of their wealth comes from the stock they own, not the paycheck. And before you think, well, that's not relevant to me, I'm not starting a business or buying apartment buildings, here's the thing. You can buy equity in thousands of companies for like $50. You can own a tiny slice of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, whatever, through index funds. You're not going to become a billionaire this way, but you are going to build actual wealth because you'll own things that produce value and grow over time, rather than just collecting paychecks and spending them. Second, reducing or eliminating what I call wealth anchors, the things that actively drain money away from you over time. The big one, obviously, is high-interest debt. Credit card debt at 20% interest is like compound interest in reverse. It's compounding against you, making you poorer every day. A $10,000 credit card balance at 20% interest will cost you $2,000 a year just in interest if you're making minimum payments. That's $2,000 that could be compound interesting in your favor, instead compounding against you. Over a decade, that one $10,000 balance could represent a $50,000 swing in your net worth when you account for what that money could have been doing for you instead. But there are subtler wealth anchors too. Cars that depreciate quickly, subscriptions you don't use, lifestyle choices that require ongoing expensive maintenance. I'm not saying live like a monk. I'm saying be conscious of what's actually draining resources away from your ability to build wealth. Third, and this one's uncomfortable, your career decisions should optimize for learning and flexibility early and for compensation later. People get this backwards all the time. They take the highest-paying job right out of college, even if it's in a dead-end industry or teaches them nothing valuable. Then, 10 years later, they're stuck, highly paid but with no options, while their friends who took lower-paying jobs in growing industries have multiple offers and actual career capital.
I watched this happen with a friend who took a $75,000 job at a pharmaceutical company, doing data entry basically, while another friend took a $52,000 job at a tech startup doing marketing. 5 years later, the pharma friend was making $85,000, still doing basically the same thing. The startup friend was at $110,000, had learned a dozen valuable skills, and had recruiters calling her constantly. That $23,000 head start ended up being a trap. The point is, wealth isn't built through salary alone. It's built through the combination of earning, saving, investing, avoiding wealth anchors, and positioning yourself for long-term growth. And promotions can actually distract from all of this because they give you the feeling of progress without the reality of it. Let me tell you something that sounds almost cynical, but I think is actually quite freeing. Your job doesn't care about making you wealthy. That's not their job. Their job is to get the maximum value from you for the minimum cost. A promotion is a tool to do that. They give you more money, you feel valued, you work harder, you stay longer. They get more value. It's not evil, it's just business. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you understand this, you can actually use it to your advantage. Instead of seeing your job as the path to wealth, you see it as a tool to build wealth. The job is the means, not the end. It provides the raw material, money, which you then deploy strategically to actually build wealth.
This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of asking, how do I get promoted? You start asking, how do I maximize the gap between earning and spending? And how do I deploy that gap most effectively? Instead of celebrating a raise by upgrading your lifestyle, you celebrate it by watching your investment accounts grow faster. I talked to this woman, Sarah, who made the shift in her early 30s. She'd been chasing promotions for years, gotten a few, and still felt broke. Then she read something that changed her mindset. I don't even remember what it was, but basically she stopped optimizing for salary and started optimizing for savings rate. She turned down a promotion that would have meant 20% more money but 40% more hours, and instead stayed in her current role, kept her expenses flat, and started investing heavily. 5 years later, she had about $180,000 invested. Her friend, who took a similar promotion and climbed the ladder, had maybe $30,000, despite earning more overall. Same starting point, completely different outcomes, all because of how they thought about wealth. Here's another thing that's rarely discussed: the wealth-building power of boring consistency. We're attracted to the exciting story, the person who started a side hustle that exploded, the crypto investor who got in early, the person who bought the right stock at the right time. But most wealth, like the vast majority of wealth that normal people build, comes from doing boring things consistently for a very long time. Maxing out your 401k every year for 30 years, investing in index funds through every market crash and boom, keeping your expenses reasonable even as your income grows, living in a modest house even though you could afford more. It's not sexy, it's not going to make a good Instagram post, but it works mathematically and reliably in a way that chasing exciting opportunities usually doesn't. And honestly, there's something deeply satisfying about this once you embrace it. You stop feeling like you're missing out on the next big thing. You stop comparing yourself to people who seem to be getting rich quick. You just do the boring stuff, watch the numbers grow, and eventually realize that the boring way is actually pretty fast. 10 years of consistent investing can put you in the top 20% of your peers financially, not because you did anything crazy, but because most people don't do it at all. I want to address something that I know some of you are thinking. This all sounds great if you make enough to save and invest, but what if you're just trying to survive? And that's a real concern. I'm not going to pretend that someone working 2 jobs to make rent has the same opportunities as someone making 6 figures. The math is different, the timeline is different, the difficulty is different. But here's what I will say. The principles still apply, just at different scales. A person making $35,000 who saves $100 a month is building wealth. Slowly, yes, but building it. And more importantly, they're building the habits and mindset that will accelerate dramatically if and when their income increases. The person who learns to live on $30,000 while making $35,000 and then gets a job making $50,000, if they can resist the urge to immediately spend up to $50,000, they're suddenly saving $20,000 a year. That's wealth building on a completely different level. The trap is thinking, I'll start when I make more. Because when you make more, the goalpost moves. It becomes, I'll start when I make even more. The person making $200,000 says the same thing as the person making $50,000, just with different reasons. The only way to actually start is to start now with what you have, however small. Let me give you some actual numbers, because I think seeing this in concrete terms makes it real. Let's say you're 30 years old, making $60,000 a year. If you can save and invest 15% of your income, that's $9,000 a year or $750 a month, and you get average market returns, you'll have about $1.8 million by age 65. That's real retirement. That's financial security. That's not having to work until you die. Now, let's say you get promoted every few years and your income grows to $80,000, then $100,000, then $120,000 over your career. That's a successful career by most standards. But if your lifestyle keeps pace with your income and you stay at saving 15%, you'll obviously end up with more, maybe $2.5 million or so, because you're saving more dollars even though it's the same percentage. But here's the interesting scenario. What if you keep your lifestyle relatively flat? What if you're living on $45,000 when you make $60,000, and you mostly keep living on $45,000 to $50,000, even as your income grows to $120,000? Now you're saving more like 50 to 60% of your income in your later career. You could retire at 45 or 50 instead of 65. You could have $4 million, $5 million by your 60s. The promotions didn't build wealth. They were just tools that provided more raw material to work with. The wealth came from the discipline of not spending it.
This is what I mean when I say promotions are a distraction. They feel like the goal, but they're just a means. The actual goal is the gap and what you do with it. There's this concept in psychology called hedonic adaptation, which basically means we get used to stuff really quickly. You get a raise, you're happy for a week or a month, and then it just becomes your new normal. You get a nicer car, it's exciting for a bit, then it's just your car. We're on this hedonic treadmill, constantly needing more to feel the same level of satisfaction. But here's something fascinating. Hedonic adaptation works both ways. If you intentionally keep your lifestyle below your means, you adapt to that too. It stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling normal. The person making $100,000 but living on $60,000 doesn't feel deprived after a while. They feel smart. They feel like they're winning a game everyone else doesn't even know they're playing. And the kicker is, they actually are happier in a lot of ways because they're not stressed about money. They have options. They can quit a job they hate because they have a year of expenses saved. They can take a risk on a career change because they're not living paycheck to paycheck. The person making more and spending more is often more stressed, more trapped, more dependent on that next promotion just to keep up with the lifestyle they've built. So, what does this all mean practically? How do you actually implement this? First, track your spending. Not in an obsessive way, but know where your money goes. Most people have no idea. They just know it disappears. Use an app, use a spreadsheet, whatever. Just track it for a month or two. You'll be surprised and probably a bit horrified, but it's the first step. Second, set up automatic investing. This is crucial. If you have to manually move money to investments every month, you won't do it consistently. But if it happens automatically, like a bill, it just happens. Set up automatic transfers to a 401k, an IRA, a brokerage account, whatever makes sense for you. Start with something, even if it's small. $100 a month is infinitely better than $0 a month. Third, resist lifestyle inflation
actively. When you get a raise or promotion, commit to saving at least half of it. If you get a $10,000 raise, your lifestyle can improve by $5,000 a year, but the other $5,000 goes to investing. This way, you still get to enjoy the promotion, but you're also accelerating your wealth building. Fourth, think in terms of years and decades, not months. Wealth building is slow. It's supposed to be slow. If someone tells you there's a fast way, they're probably trying to sell you something or scam you. The people who get wealthy quickly usually had advantages, inheritance, connections, luck, or took massive risks that could have just as easily destroyed them. For normal people, wealth is built slowly and boringly. Look, I know this isn't the exciting message you wanted to hear. You probably clicked on this video hoping for some secret strategy or shortcut. But the truth is, the secret is that there is no secret. It's just math, time, and discipline. It's understanding that your salary is a tool, not a goal. It's recognizing that the feeling of getting promoted is not the same as actually building wealth. The good news, and there really is good news here, is that this is entirely within your control. You can't control whether you get promoted. You can't control the stock market's returns in any given year. You can't control the economy. But you can control the gap between what you earn and what you spend. You can control whether you invest consistently. You can control whether you let lifestyle inflation take over or whether you resist it. And when you do control these things, when you really commit to building wealth instead of just earning more, something shifts. You stop feeling like you're on a treadmill. You start feeling like you're making real progress, not fake progress, not the temporary high of a promotion, but the actual accumulation of options and security and freedom. That's what wealth actually is, by the way. It's not yachts and mansions, it's options. It's the option to leave a job you hate, the option to take time off to care for a family member, the option to retire when you want to, not when you have to, the option to take a risk on something you believe in without worrying about losing everything. Your promotion might give you a better title and a bigger paycheck, but it probably won't give you those options. You know what will? The boring, consistent, mathematically inevitable process of spending less than you earn and investing the difference for a long time. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else is details and optimization. So the next time you're grinding for that promotion, chasing that raise, working late to impress your boss, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is this building wealth or is this building income? Because they're not the same thing. And confusing them, mistaking one for the other, that might be the most expensive mistake you ever make.